Good morning. Please take your Bibles and open to the book of Ecclesiastes. You can just turn to chapter 1, and we'll be kind of bouncing across the book this morning. Have you made any plans recently? You made some life plans or life goals? Maybe you've just thought about where you want to go this summer, if you want to get out of town for a little bit. When we think about the plans we make, we usually have a few categories we put them in. If you're younger, you're probably thinking about school and education, what you're going to do for the rest of your life. That's what we often ask people, young people, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? We think about plans involving marriage and children. How many kids do you want? We think about plans involving finances and retirement. You got to save up enough so you can eventually stop working and enjoy yourself. We often think about wanting to make some kind of impact on this world or in our lives. Maybe making an impact on those around us. And yet, the wise man opens the book of Ecclesiastes by saying, your life doesn't really even matter. What a way to start a book. What a way to start a sermon. Come now while we stand and sing, right? That's what you want to hear on a Sunday morning. That's why you came this morning, was to have such a discouraging message as your life doesn't matter. He says life is vain. He says you won't even be remembered. You are nothing new. You will create nothing new. And your life will make no difference in the world. One writer says that the Ecclesiastes author is talking about the treadmill of life. And what he means by that is you're running and running and running and not even getting anywhere. And you see the belt on that treadmill just circling, cycling around. He says in verse 5 that it's just like the sun. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. I can get a nice little cartoon picture of this. Sun rises in the east and it goes across the sky and it sets in the west and then it runs real quick back to the other side so it can do it again. He says that's what life is like. He says in verse 6, it's like the wind. It just blows to the south and then around to the north, and around goes the wind on its circuits, and the wind returns, and yet it doesn't ever get to some place and stop. He says it's like the rivers in verse 7. All streams run to the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. I like to stay up to date on my illustrations, and I hurt myself with this one because things have changed now. The Golden Gate Bridge used to take 3 years to be painted, and they would paint it, and when they finished painting it, they would have to start over again. Moms, that's like laundry, right? I saw a thing the other day. It said, can you believe that I just got caught up on the laundry and my kids have the audacity to be running through the house clothed? And so it was with the Golden Gate Bridge. You'd finish painting it and they'd have to start over again. There is in London called the Forth Bridge, Forth. Apparently it's the same kind of way. It takes about 5 years to paint, and they immediately have to start over. And the reason that my illustration is kind of ruined now is with the technological advancements. The paint is a lot better than it used to be. And so now they just have to spot check the Golden Gate Bridge. But you still understand the point. And he says there's nothing new under the sun. And what we see is that there are some exceptions that prove the rule. He says you're not going to make any impact in life. It's very rare that a George Washington comes along. that is so synonymous with the founding of a country that his effigy still lives on in monuments and on our currency, that we know exactly who we're talking about and have a pretty good picture in our mind of George Washington. It's not every day that an Albert Einstein comes along and changes the way we think about science, if we can even understand what he was talking about. Most of us just have to take his word for it. You can also look at the other side of this, that there are those who are infamous. It's not every day that you have Adolf Hitler, who is stuck in history and in our minds because of the impact he made on life. Ecclesiastes 1 at verse 11, there is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. That's the end of his introduction. Good luck, folks. What you do doesn't even matter. We can do this very quickly, I think. Raise your hand if you know the names of all four of your biological, I know you can have others, but of your four biological grandparents. Raise your hand if you know the names of all four of your biological grandparents. All right? That's most of us. Go just one more generation. How many of you can name all 8 of your biological great-grandparents? I can get most of them. I think I can get all 8. And that's only because of Tiffany playing around on Ancestry.com during COVID. Did y'all see that change? Raise your hand for all 4 grandparents. Raise your hand for all 8 great-grandparents. That's only one generation. One generation, 20, 30, 40 years, and the names completely disappeared. Maybe this wise man is onto something. Verse 11 again, there is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. What a gloomy introduction. That sure is the opposite of how we try and think about life. Boy, Jonathan, that's a great way to really get us pumped to serve the Lord this week. Well, as we think about the book of Ecclesiastes this morning, we want to remember that the author is speaking about life under the sun. He's talking about life here on earth. He's talking about life here and now. And he's talking about how to find meaning here. How do we determine value in this life? How can we find purpose and reason on earth? And so that's what I want to think about for a few moments this morning. I want to think about how we can best live life. And we can learn this from the author of Ecclesiastes. I'll give you some behind the curtain info. I had a lesson I was going to do, and I'm going to do it. I hinted at it last week at the end of the lesson, and this was point 2 of the lesson. And it just kind of grew and grew and grew, and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to have to do Ecclesiastes. And so Grant, sorry about this. You're getting double here. But I felt like this would make kind of its own lesson, and I'll address the other at another time. We typically think of Solomon as writing the book of Ecclesiastes. There's some difficulties with that, but that's the traditional view. And so if I say Solomon, just kind of go with me. I'll often refer to the wise man. But this first thing that he does is he's going to do a life experiment. He says that I want to experience all these things in life, and I want to have them to their fullest and see if these things give me meaning. Or will it all still be, his catchphrase is, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. All is worthless is it still going to be that way? So he sets up kind of this life experiment. He puts some life goals in place. In chapter 2 at verse 1, he says, I said to my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. And so from the very beginning, he says, I was just going to enjoy life. And whatever was pleasurable, I would do it. We call this hedonism. And it's interesting, on these first two things, he actually goes ahead and gives you the conclusion of it. He says, but behold, this also was vanity. So verse 2, he says, you know what? I was going to laugh. I was going to enjoy humor. And that was going to be my goal. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? And so while we all enjoy a good joke and to have a nice laugh, he said, it really doesn't achieve anything. And so he goes again in chapter 3, or in verse 3 of chapter 2. He says, so I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine. Sounds like people are still doing this life experiment, doesn't it? But I tried to keep my wits about me, he says. And so now this life experiment, maybe I can find some meaning in alcohol and folly. Just having a good time. I'm going to party. And we'll see how life goes. In verses 4 through 6, he says that he tried architecture and nature. I made great works. I built houses. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks, planted all kinds of fruit trees. I made pools. I made forest. In verse 7, he says, I acquired many servants and slaves, and I had great possessions. Boy, there's a good life goal. I don't want to have to do that laundry we were just talking about. I don't want to have to cook for myself anymore. In chapter 2 at verse 8, he says, I acquired wealth and entertainment. I got singers, he said. And I even got women, many concubines. And if this is Solomon, we know the number, don't we? 700 wives and 300 concubines. And then in verse 9, he says, I got fame and notoriety. So I became great and surpassed who were all before me in Jerusalem. Boy, this is what we want in life, is it not? This is what a kid would sit down and write out as their list. Do y'all remember playing MASH as a kid in school? You write MASH up at the top of the paper, and then you pick 3 or 4 girls' names that you might like, one that you don't like, and then you have how many kids you're going to want, and then you draw a circle, and however many spirals are in the circle you go through, and up at the top, MASH stands for mansion, apartment, shack, or a house. And you want the M. You want the mansion. If you can't have the mansion, you at least got to get the house. And you want this. All of this stuff is how we think about life. I'm getting some weird looks for you. I know some of you played that. Have to call up my friends that I went to middle school with. I want you to look at what he says about this. Verse 10, whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil that I expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. Can you imagine working like the dog you would have to work like to accomplish all of these things, to be able to go through all of this and to still be miserable and to not have any meaning in life? What a bad break. What an insult. And yet he says, I still didn't find any purpose. Turn over to chapter 4. In chapter 4, he tells us what all of this striving and laboring, why we do it all. He tells us what it's all for. In chapter 4, verse 4, then I saw that all toil and all skill in work come from a man's envy of his neighbor. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. That one hurts, doesn't it? You did all of this just to keep up with Bob across the fence. You did all of this just to keep up with the Joneses, as the phrase goes. They're in South Indiana today, though. All of this you thought would give you meaning. It was worthless. You were only doing it to keep up with your neighbor, and now guess what? You and your neighbor are unhappy. Nobody found meaning in any of this. And you want to know why you don't find meaning in all of this? You acquire all of this for yourself. You bring all of this to yourself. You put all of this in your house. You tear down your barns and build bigger barns. Chris talked about that Wednesday night. Do you know why none of it matters? Because the same event happens to everyone. And throughout this little book, he says over and over again that death is the great equalizer. You can be so wealthy. You can have so much money, so many stocks, so much property and real estate that you begin to lose count of it all. And you think, look at what I've done. And then you die and you leave it all to somebody else. He says the same event happens to everyone. Back in chapter 2 at verse 18. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. He says, so I turned and gave my heart up to despair. Doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, wise or foolish, righteous or unrighteous, everyone's going to die. And you all know the phrase, the only two certain things in life are death and taxes. We'll leave everything to someone else. And even if we take all the precautions, even if we only drink kale smoothies, and we exercise, and we have insurance, and we make all the right decisions, we do all the right things, we're safe, we always look both ways before we cross the street, we always wear a helmet when we ride our bike, even then, sometimes things just happen. Turn over to chapter 9 at verse 11. Chapter 9 at verse 11. Again, I saw that under the sun, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. There is a level of randomness to life. And he goes on. For man does not know his time, like fish that are taken in an evil net, and like birds that are caught in a snare. So the children of man are snared at an evil time when it suddenly falls upon them. We thought we were doing everything just right, and lightning strikes. Nothing we could have done about it. And I love what he does here. It's very humbling what he says here. We think we're so smart, don't we? We think we are so clever. And he says, you're like a dumb fish or a dumb bird that got caught in a net. And he's like, that's what life is. We think we're so clever living life, making sure we've checked all the boxes, dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. And he says, that's the way it is. And because the same event happens to us all, look at chapter 7 at verse 2. He gives the weirdest statement in the whole book, I think. In chapter 7 at verse 2, he says, it is better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. This guy just said that funerals are better than parties. And I don't know a soul that would agree with that. Listen to what he says, though. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. And now we're starting to get somewhere. He says there's value in a funeral, because in a funeral you're reminded of your humanity. In a funeral you're reminded that you too will die. And when you think about death, it should impact your life. So now we're starting to get somewhere. It's still a little doom and gloom, isn't it? Still a little, life stinks. And yet, maybe we can turn this boat around and get a pretty positive message from the end of it. And so what he does is he says, I'm an old man with all of this wisdom. Let me break it down for you, young people. Turn over to chapter 11 at verse 9. Because he goes through all of this doom and gloom. Life is worthless. Life is pointless. Life is vain. It's like a good emo song from 1999. And he says, he gives you some wisdom, and he's like, sometimes life can be a little bit better if you do this, but at the end of the day, you're still going to die. So, young people, he says, let me offer you some advice. And this is really neat. It's in chapter 11. It's verse 9 and 10, and then chapter 12 at verse 1. And here's what's cool about it. In the ESV, all of them start with an R. And so he gives you 3 pieces of advice, 3 things to keep in mind as you live life. The first one is, rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes. I like what he says here. He says, you're young. Enjoy life. Enjoy that level of strength that you have. It amazes me to watch really anybody younger than me jump off of stuff. As I see my knees twisting and catching, and young people just jump off of stuff like it didn't just shoot bottle rockets up their kneecaps. So enjoy your strength and enjoy your mental clarity. When that time in life when you can go into a room and remember why you went in there. I had double pneumonia when COVID was going around in 2020. I had COVID and it turned into pneumonia. And one of the symptoms I had was some forgetfulness. Let me tell you, as a preacher, that's not great. I was very fortunate. I'm not complaining. I was very fortunate. It only happened one time in a sermon or Bible class. I was very thankful about that. But I would just be talking, and all of a sudden, the one word would just jump right out of my head. And I remember having to struggle with that, mostly just in conversation. When it happened in Bible class that one time, I said something about it, and one guy in the back goes, "Wait until you're 60." And he had just turned 60, so he was speaking from some experience there. So enjoy your strength and enjoy your mental clarity. Enjoy life. Go and do what you want to do, he says. But, chapter 11, verse 9, know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. So I don't think he's saying you have a blank check, go and sow your wild oats. No, go and do the things that young people want to do. Go and live your life, experience life, and all of these kind of things. But remember that you will be called to judgment for what you do. So let that guide you somewhat. I was talking with Monty about their granddaughter, Madeline, who's been over in Kenya. How long has she been there? 9 months? 6 months? And very young girl, most of you know her, and what an experience that has been, and the views she's got to see and the things she's got to experience, and that's wonderful. He says, go and do that. But remember that your actions will be judged. So young people, enjoy being young. Don't try and grow up too quickly. Then he gives you verse 10. And he says, remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from the body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. I've struggled with this verse for a long time. I don't know exactly, always know what he's trying to say there. So I turn open, Paul Earnhardt has a little tiny commentary on Ecclesiastes, and I think he spelled it out perfectly. The New American Standard says, put away grief and anger. The New King James says, put away sorrow. And I think what he's saying here is to enjoy those carefree days of life when you don't really have a whole lot of stress. When your body works the way it should be, or the way it should. I laugh. Kids can fall asleep on a floor and wake up like nothing happened. And they don't have the stress of life and bills and all of these things weighing them down. And he says, yeah, don't worry about those things right now. Enjoy the carefree days where there is no stress. But remember that youthful days pass quickly, and that's not the essence of life. Now, I appreciate that advice as well. Enjoy it. Don't get so carried away with adult things that it weighs you down and ruins your life and stresses you out. You're a kid. You shouldn't be having to deal with that kind of stuff, he says. But remember that time will pass. And then what I think is a pretty bad chapter break, he gives us verse 1 of chapter 12. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you say, I have no pleasure in them. And he goes on to give one of the cleverest poetic descriptions of old age. It's absolutely wonderful. He talks about when the almond tree blossoms as hair turns white. And let me tell you, you can only pluck those white beard hairs for so long before some bald spots start showing up. He says when the grinders cease because you've lost a few too many teeth and steak becomes a little more difficult to eat. When desire fails. When the lamps are dimmed. I used to struggle with this because In my head, in my foolish, younger head, I thought, no. Serving God has to get easier as you get older. And yet, that's not what he says. He says, remember your Creator now, in the days of your youth, before the years come in which you say, I have no pleasure in them. And so I got to say all of this at once. With all of your vitality, you think you have time. With all of your youth and strength, you think that taking God seriously can wait for another season. But, he says, today, now is the time to learn about God and to establish a relationship with God. Because, he says, let me tell you, some days are coming and things are going to happen that will quench that light that is in your eyes. Real life is going to hit, and it's going to hit hard. And you will already need God in your life. Those are the days in which you will need the Lord and will have established a relationship with Him. Young people, kind of in the middle here. When I said that, did you hear all the mm-hms on the sides over here? And I have no problem telling you that I'm spoiled rotten. I've had a very easy life. And yet there have been times that something has knocked me off of my feet, and I am quite thankful that I've had the Lord to turn to and to rely on and to trust in. And so while you're still young and have all that vitality and energy and mental clarity, go ahead and devote yourself to the Lord now. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. That's it. That's his sermon. Life stinks. It's not fair. There's no meaning in it. There's no purpose in it. It's all vain. Everything you do is worthless. That's life under the sun. He's going to say something at the very end of the book, chapter 12, 13, and 14, verses 13 and 14. You remember it, 12, 13, 14. That change everything, though. And you almost have to read the book again. He's going to say in chapter 12, verse 13, the end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Some versions say, for this is the whole of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. So let's just kind of summarize what he really just said. Life is worthless and vain and meaningless. There's no purpose or reason to any of it if you only view it as our time on earth. If you keep God in the picture, if you keep a spiritual perspective, an eternal perspective, now we find meaning. Now we find value. Now what I do today matters. I've been quoting a lot of movies this morning, so I'll quote another one. Gladiator, best movie ever. Right at the very beginning, Russell Crowe, he's trying to hype up his soldiers, and he says, remember, men, what you do in life echoes in eternity. No truer statement has ever been spoken. And because if we have the right perspective, life does matter. And so we live life with the end in mind. We live life with eternity in mind, with God in mind. And I said, you have to go back and read the whole book, and I encourage you to do that. I hope you will. But we don't have to this morning. We can read 11 verses in Psalm 16, and it gives us everything on the opposite side of Ecclesiastes, on the opposite side of that spectrum of doom and gloom and meaninglessness and vanity. I want you to read Psalm 16 with me, and then we'll offer our invitation. Psalm 16, preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. There's the starting point. It was the ending point for the Ecclesiastes author. Here's the starting point for the psalmist. I say to you, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. As for the saints in the land, they are the excellent ones in whom is all my delight. The sorrows of those who run after another god shall multiply. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take their names on my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. I love verse 6. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel in the night. Also, my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me. Excuse me. I have set the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad, and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure, for you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You make known to me the path of life. And then finally, you want real value? You want real meaning? You want reason? You want purpose in life? In your presence, there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. I was wanting to find some way to conclude. I needed something powerful about how we need to live life with God in mind. I needed something about the power of heaven. And I just was looking around at some phrases, and I stumbled onto this last phrase of this psalm. I was like, that's good. That's good. But like a good student, you got to know what the context says, right? What if this is a psalm about something else completely? It's one of those psalms that says, God, kill all my neighbors. I don't want to do that. So I went back and I read the whole psalm, and I thought, that's amazing. It's Ecclesiastes from the other side. Not from the side of having been jaded by life, but of a life that has put God first always. That God has been the motivator and the decider of everything. And when you live life that way, you can conclude in your presence is all joy. But do you have a relationship with the Lord? Is that how you're living life? Are you prepared to meet God? There's an interesting phrase that's used for a song. We use this song to encourage those who are not yet Christians to obey the gospel. Because Judgment Day is coming, and you need to be ready for when God comes. And that's true. And I asked Steve to lead this song. Thank you. Wherever he is. There he is. That's not how this phrase is originally used in Scripture. This passage is used in the Minor Prophets. And it's, you've been living a life of sin. I've sent you prophets. I've given you my word. And you're still sinning. I'm coming for you. Prepare to meet your God. The time will be gone. And ladies and gentlemen, a time is coming in which there will be no more time. And the time to prepare to meet your God will be gone. Now you're just meeting God, and you will have to accept it as it comes. So today is the day of salvation. Today is the day of repentance. Today is the day to prepare. To decide to live your life with the end in mind, with God as the center of all. You give your faith to Him. You give him your life in obedience. You're buried with Christ in baptism. You rise to walk a new life where we keep him at the forefront. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you live life. And that's what the gospel invites you to this morning while we stand and while we sing.